Ever wonder why some kids just seem to have math sense and others just struggle with everything math?
Yes, math sense just seems to be some mystical thing. You either have it or you don't.
It seems that way, but science is figuring it out. And a big part of it is called subitizing, which is what we will cover in today's podcast.
Sounds exciting. Let's go.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into something called subitizing. I know it might sound kind of intimidating at first, but trust me, it's way cooler than it sounds. We'll explain the whole concept. And then we've also got a bunch of research papers that really explore just how powerful this skill really is.
Yeah. It's funny because subitizing is actually something we all do every day without even realizing it. It's basically just that instant recognition of how many things are in a small group without actually having to count them.
Yeah, so like when you see a dice roll and you immediately know it's a 5 without having to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Exactly. Or even think about when you're grabbing a handful of grapes or something. You probably have a good sense of how many you've got just by looking at it.
Totally. It's almost like having like a sixth sense for numbers. But what's interesting is it's more than just a cool party trick.
Yeah.
Like our sources are saying that this ability to subitize is actually like a crucial building block for developing a strong number sense.
Yeah, and having that strong number sense basically just means that you have a deep understanding of how numbers work and how they relate to each other.
Hmm.
And then because of that, you can manipulate them easily in your mind. It's kind of like, I don't know, having a superpower that makes learning more advanced math feel way less intimidating.
So if you're really good at subitizing as a kid, does that mean you're going to be like a math whiz later on in life?
Yeah, but the research definitely suggests there's a strong connection there. There are studies that have actually shown that children who are good at subitizing tend to do a lot better with things like addition and subtraction later on. It's like they've got a head start because they can already see those quantities
Right.
without having to count each object one by one.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
So subitizing helps build a foundation for number sense, and then that foundation can lead to better arithmetic skills. I don't know, are you starting to see how the seemingly simple skill is actually pretty powerful?
Absolutely. And there's even more to it than that. Researchers, like Starkey and McCandless, they found that subitizing actually isn't just about recognizing quantities in isolation. It's about understanding how those quantities actually relate to each other.
So like seeing that a group of 5 can be made up of a group of 2 and a group of 3.
Exactly. So subitizing really helps kids grasp those part-whole relationships, which are absolutely essential for understanding how addition and subtraction work. They start to see that numbers can be broken down and combined in all these different ways.
Yeah, it's not just like rote memorization. It's about actually understanding the building blocks of numbers. So we know that subitizing makes learning arithmetic easier, but does it actually make doing math easier in your head?
That's a really great question, and I think the research seems to suggest that it does. Think of it this way. If you had to count every single object, every time you did a math problem, it would just take up so much mental energy, right? Your brain would be working overtime.
Yeah, that would be exhausting.
Exactly. But when you're able to subitize, you're essentially just using a mental shortcut. You free up all that brain power so you can focus on the actual problem solving instead of getting bogged down and counting all the time.
It's almost like having a built-in mental calculator that takes care of all the basic stuff for you, so you can focus on tackling the bigger challenges.
Precisely. And researchers actually have a name for that mental energy we're talking about. They call it cognitive load. And studies show that subitizing actually reduces cognitive load during all these different mathematical tasks.
Okay, so this is where it starts to get really interesting to me. The source was saying that some researchers actually believe that being able to subitize well might predict how well a child will do in math later on in life. Like it's a glimpse into their math future or something.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. There's this one study that found a really strong link between a child's early subitizing ability and their success later on with tasks that involve different types of numbers,
Wow.
the ones that tell you how many, and then the other ones that tell you the order of things. They call these cardinal and ordinal numbers.
Okay, wait, hold on. Can we break that down a little bit? I'm just picturing our listener right now, and they're probably thinking, cardinal, ordinal. What are all these fancy math words?
Yeah, you're right. Let's clarify that. Cardinal numbers are just referring to the quantity, like how many things there are, like 3 apples or 7 cars.
Mhm.
And then ordinal numbers tell us the position of something in a sequence. So first place, second place, and so on.
Gotcha. Thanks for clearing that up.
Mm-hmm.
So the study found a link between subitizing and being able to understand and work with both of these types of numbers. That's pretty powerful stuff.
It really is.
Yeah.
And those findings are actually backed up by other research, too. Sooks and his colleagues did a whole study back in 2013, and they found that kids who were good at subitizing early on were much more likely to excel in things like comparing numbers, doing
Right.
basic arithmetic, and even solving word problems.
So if subitizing is so beneficial, is there a way to actually get better at it? Can you train your brain to subitize like a pro?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? But the good news is, researchers are definitely exploring ways to do just that.
Now we're talking. This is where our deep dive takes us beyond just understanding subitizing to actually trying to hack our brains to become better at it.
Exactly. The source material talked about all these studies, where they used special programs that were designed to boost subitizing skills in children, and the results were actually really promising, it seems like. With the right kind of training, we can actually improve our ability to subitize.
So what do these programs look like? Are we talking about those brain training apps that you see advertised everywhere?
Well, it's not quite as simple as just downloading an app. Think more along the lines of engaging games and activities that help kids practice visualizing and quickly recognizing quantities.
Like flashcards with different numbers of dots on them? Or maybe even like games where they have to quickly group objects together?
Exactly. There are all sorts of creative ways to make practicing subitizing fun and engaging for kids. And research by Crolin and Knoll in 2015 actually found that. These types of training methods can have a significant impact on a child's fluency with numbers and their overall math skills. You know what's really great is that Learning Success is making this so accessible for parents. They've got this great course which is made up of videos where you see a grouping of objects and then you just say the number. It starts off with small numbers of objects and then builds. Then after that, it builds up speed so kids can really build their skills.
Wow, that's great. So kids just watch and engage with the videos and build their skills?
Right, it's a simple and easy method. There's a link in the show notes to the course so parents can get started right away. Skills.
I'm starting to feel like subitizing is this hidden superpower that
Yeah.
we all have, and we're just starting to unlock its potential.
I love that analogy. And it turns out that the power of subitizing might extend beyond just numbers. The source material hinted at some pretty mind-blowing connections to other cognitive skills. We're going to need to go down the rabbit hole a little further to explore that, though.
Let's not keep our listeners waiting. This is where things get really exciting for me. Lead the way. Let's see what other mysteries subitizing holds.
You know, it's funny you should mention that, because remember how we were talking about subitizing being like a mental shortcut? Well, that shortcut might actually be tied to our working memory.
Oh, really? Working memory. Isn't that like
Yeah.
the thing that helps us remember phone numbers and grocery lists and things like that? What does that have to do with subitizing?
It's all connected. So working memory is basically the part of our brain that lets us hold on to information and manipulate it in our minds. It's like a mental workspace where we can like juggle thoughts and ideas.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see the connection here. So does that mean that if you're good at subitizing, you're also good at remembering things?
The research suggests there's a pretty strong link. Just think about it. When you subitize, you're essentially taking a mental snapshot of a quantity and storing it in your working memory. You're holding on to that visual information without having to actually count each item.
So maybe people who are good at subitizing are also good at like remembering visual patterns or details.
Exactly. And having a strong working memory isn't just helpful for remembering things. It's actually essential for like problem solving and decision making and even staying focused. It's like a mental muscle that just gets stronger the more we use it.
And maybe subitizing is one way to like give that muscle a good workout. But hold on, our source also mentioned something about subitizing being linked to other cognitive skills too, like things like mental rotation and spatial awareness.
Yeah, that's right. So it actually seems like subitizing might be tapping into this whole network of cognitive abilities that go way beyond just numbers. For example, studies have shown that people who are good at subitizing tend to also be really good at mentally rotating objects in their mind.
Whoa. That's kind of wild. So like if I'm trying to picture how a new piece of furniture is going to fit into my living room, my subitizing skills might actually come in handy.
It's totally possible. I mean, spatial awareness is all about understanding like the relationships between objects in space. And it turns out that subitizing might be playing a role in that too.
This is blowing my mind. I never would have thought that something as simple as like recognizing a group of dots could be connected to all these other brain functions. It's like subitizing is this secret key that unlocks a whole network of different cognitive
I
strengths.
know, right? And there's even more. Researchers like Kowalski and Turner, who we talked about earlier, they found a really strong link between working memory and the ability to solve math problems. So it's like subitizing can boost our working memory, which in turn can make us much better problem solvers.
Okay, so we've established that subitizing is pretty awesome. But you know what I'm thinking right now? I bet our listeners are wondering how they can actually apply all this knowledge to their own lives. Like, what are some practical things they can do to boost their own subitizing skills or help their kids develop this superpower?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the good news is there are tons of really fun and engaging ways to incorporate subitizing into your everyday life. So for little ones who are just starting to understand numbers, simple games that involve like quickly recognizing and naming small quantities are perfect.
Like those classic dot pattern flashcards. I remember those from when I was a kid.
Exactly. You can also use everyday objects like blocks or toys or even pieces of fruit to create really simple subitizing activities. So for example, you could just hold up 3 apples and be like, hey, how many apples do you see?
Or you could play like I Spy with subitizing.
Yeah.
I spy 3 red blocks.
I love it. You're incorporating subitizing into a fun and familiar game, and then as children grow, you can gradually increase the complexity of the activities.
So instead of just recognizing quantities,
Yeah,
they could start comparing groups of objects, like which group has more, which group has less, are they the same?
exactly. You could also introduce games that involve adding or subtracting small quantities using subitizing.
Oh, I like that. Like maybe rolling a pair of dice and then quickly figuring out the total without counting the dots.
Yeah, and even for adults who want to sharpen their subitizing skills, there are plenty of options too.
Would that learning success course work for adults?
Yes, of course. The adult brain is neuroplastic too. Science used to believe that adult brains couldn't change, but it turns out that wasn't true. Brains can develop at any age, so we should keep challenging our brain throughout life. And the Learning Success course is a great way for adults to do that.
Great, I'm in. There are real-world applications for subitizing too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think about like cooking. You often need to quickly assess how much of an ingredient you have without actually stopping to count everything, or imagine you're like organizing your desk or something. You might quickly group similar items together without like meticulously counting every single paperclip or pen. Subitizing is a skill that can help streamline all sorts of everyday tasks and make our lives a little bit easier.
It's like a secret weapon for efficiency. So whether you're a parent who's looking to have their child's math skills, or an educator seeking some creative teaching methods, or just somebody who wants to boost their own cognitive abilities, remember that subitizing is a really powerful tool that you have at your disposal.
Yeah, it's a skill that can be developed and strengthened and really integrated into so many different aspects of our lives.
And speaking of unlocking potential, there's one question that we often hear from people. Is subitizing something that we're born with? Or is it something that we learn through experience?
That's a really fascinating question, and one that researchers have been going back and forth on for years.
So what does the research say? Is it nature or nurture? Are we hardwired for subitizing? Or is it all about our environment and experiences?
Well, like a lot of things with human development, it's probably a combination of both.
I mean, classic nature and nurture tag team.
Exactly. There's some evidence that suggests that humans actually have an innate capacity for subitizing very small quantities, like instantly recognizing groups of 1, 2, or 3 objects.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even babies seem to have some awareness of like really small quantities.
Right, and so this early sensitivity to small numbers could actually be seen as like a building block for developing more advanced subitizing skills later on.
So maybe we're born with like a rudimentary subitizing ability, but then our experiences and our learning shape how that ability develops and expands.
Exactly. Think of it this way. A child who's growing up in an environment that's really rich with numerical concepts and who has a lot of opportunities to practice subitizing, like playing games with dice or sorting objects, that child is probably going to develop stronger subitizing skills than a child who doesn't have those same experiences.
It's like any skill. The more you practice it, the better you become. And the cool thing about subitizing is that it's already woven into so many of our everyday activities.
Exactly. From setting the table to playing board games to even like counting the coins in your pocket. Subitizing is everywhere. And the
Yeah.
more aware we become of it, the more we can consciously incorporate it into our learning and our development.
So whether you're a parent or an educator,
Uh-huh.
or just someone who's curious about like the inner workings of your own mind, understanding subitizing can really open up a lot of new possibilities for learning and cognitive growth. It's like this hidden key to unlocking a deeper understanding of numbers and ourselves and the world around us.
Beautifully said. And that actually brings us to a very thought-provoking question to leave you with. If subitizing is so fundamental to our understanding of math and like how our brains work, how can we actually use this knowledge to become better learners and maybe even better thinkers?
Ooh, that's a good one. It really makes you think about how different our approach to math education might be if we really put subitizing front and center. Like imagine if learning math felt more like a natural extension of how our brains are already wired to work. Instead of like memorizing times tables and stuff, we're tapping into this like innate ability to see and understand quantities.
I know it's an exciting thought. Like maybe we could help people develop this more intuitive grasp of math concepts
Mhm.
and make it way less intimidating and more accessible for everyone.
And who knows? Maybe those stronger subitizing skills could even spill over into other areas of learning and thinking, like maybe boost our cognitive flexibility and problem-solving abilities.
Definitely a possibility worth exploring. And the best part is, you don't have to wait for like a major educational overhaul or anything to start incorporating subitizing into your own life or the lives of your kids. We've talked about so many simple and fun activities already.
Right, like those games with the dot cards, or even just using everyday objects to practice recognizing and comparing different quantities.
Exactly. The key is to make it playful and engaging. Turn it into a game or a challenge, a fun way to exercise those mental muscles.
And remember, subitizing isn't just for kids. Us adults can benefit from sharpening our subitizing skills too. It can help with everything from mental math to spatial awareness to even decision making.
Absolutely. We've all got this amazing cognitive tool right at our disposal. It's just a matter of recognizing its power and finding ways to actually put it to work.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive for me. I feel like I've learned so much and gained a whole new appreciation for something that I used to just take for granted.
Me too. It's incredible how much depth there really is to something as seemingly simple as just recognizing a group of dots.
And for anyone who wants to explore the research that we've talked about today in more detail, we've included a full list of all the papers in our show notes.
Yeah, don't be afraid to go full on nerd and check them out. You might discover even more fascinating connections and applications.
So to all our amazing listeners out there, we challenge you to go out and explore the world of subitizing. Pay attention to those moments when you're using this skill without even realizing it. Try out some of the activities that we've mentioned. You might be surprised at what you discover about your own brain power.
And remember, the ability to quickly grasp quantities. It's not just some neat trick, it's actually a fundamental part of how we make sense of the world around us.
All right, everyone, keep those brains buzzing and keep exploring. Until next time.